We're seeing an uptick of a pet overpopulation crisis, especially here in Georgia.
We have an increasing number of animals coming into our shelters, and as a result, we also have an increasing number of animals being euthanized at our shelters. Last year, in fact, we euthanized 22,000 dogs in the municipal shelters here.
To solve the problem with an overpopulated shelter, you have to get to the root of the problem.
How can we work together? How can we partner together to make things happen?
My name is Janet Martin, and I am a doctor of veterinary medicine. We've been recommending spaying and neutering animals for many, many years, and primarily the reason is addressing the overpopulation of pet animals that don't have homes. And so we've seen that our animal shelters and organizations that are addressing stray and unwanted pets are overburdened with numbers and have been for a long time. And so recommending stopping reproduction seems to be a sensible solution. And I believe it continues to be a sensible solution.
My name is Lisa Milet, and I'm the Annie and Zach Stanton Distinguished Professor of Canine Welfare Law at the University of Georgia. My students and I work with jurisdictions around the state on animal control practices, on shelter programs, and on local ordinances to improve compliance and help animal welfare. Overcrowding and overpopulation of companion animals affects communities negatively in a couple of different ways. One is that people take on more animals, perhaps, than they're able to actually care for, and that means that at some point the balance might tip and they stop being able to care for them at all. In another way, the shelters then become overcrowded, and that's really hard on the shelter workers and the volunteers. And finally, when we have this many animals that are being produced without lifelong homes, we end up with a lot of stray animals.
I'm Claudine Wilkins. I'm the founder of the Animal Protection Society. I'm a former prosecutor and generally an animal law expert. There's a collateral damage to having too many animals in a community that can't house them and keep them as pets. Oftentimes they're dumped on the side of the street, which, by the way, is a crime in Georgia. But also, those animals that are dumped, especially dogs, will start packing up with other dogs. And when you have a wild pack of dogs roaming the streets, it's a public safety issue. There's an uptick in dog attacks when you have a pet overpopulation crisis. There's an uptick in disease spread.
My name's Spencer Johnston. I'm the James and Marjorie Wagner Professor, and I am the department head for small animal medicine and surgery here in the College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Georgia. One of the things that we know is that intact animals, both intact males and females, tend to roam. They seek mates. As they roam, and particularly as we become more of a suburban and urban society, there's the opportunity for interaction with vehicles. And so it's generally well known that the rates of animals that are going to be hit by cars, that particularly if you are an intact male, you are at a high risk of suffering an automobile trauma.
During COVID, people got lonely. So the first thing people started doing was adopting. They went out and they got that puppy or kitty, and they thought they were doing the right thing, and they were at the time. But then when life went back to normal, they decided they could no longer take care of that animal. People started dumping their animals back to the shelter. The shelter became overburdened and overpopulated.
COVID-19 decreased the number of spay-neuter resources there were in communities. A lot of spay-neuter clinics shut down as they were deemed to be non-essential services, and so they weren't able to offer the surgeries. And it's estimated actually that as of 2022, we were short 2.7 million spay-neuter surgeries because of COVID in the United States. And those are surgeries that were not done and where there are now the intact animals who have in many cases reproduced, adding to that number. And so it's really put us behind in terms of the spay-neuter rates of the animals in our community, which means that we have escalating production. One of the easy answers to the spay-neuter crisis that gets thrown around a lot would be to have some sort of mandatory spay-neuter laws where people are required to have their dogs and cats spayed or neutered by a certain age. I'm not so fond of that as an approach because there are owners who can have animals and that are intact and not have this sort of reckless breeding we see.
There's a lot of pushback on mandatory spay and neuter. First and foremost, some of the actual nonprofits and animal charities will say if your community does not supply an opportunity for either low cost or free spay neuter, then you can't mandate it. So one of the first things we would like to see is that the community trying to enforce such a law or pass it actually provides those resources first.
I prefer consensual programs and targeted mandatory spay-neuter where animals that are actually a nuisance in the community or shown to be a problem in some way might be required to be spayed or neutered, but it's not a broad brush approach. High-quality, high-volume spay-neuter is a different set of techniques for spaying and neutering cats and dogs. And by different set of techniques, I mean they're more advanced techniques than vets usually learn in vet school, where they result in animals being under anesthesia for less time, there's less trauma to the associated tissues, and the animals usually recover more quickly and more easily than from more traditional surgeries.
If you're doing just spay-neuter surgery, you can be super efficient because you're doing the same thing and you can just have really a flow going that allows you to be very efficient and do more of them than traditional techniques would allow. So it's fantastic. The shelter world has really embraced this as these techniques work, they're safe, it's just really an efficiency situation.
Low-cost spay-neuter on high-quality, high-volume, we're talking 30 to 40 animals per day at a minimum. And sometimes they're often done at a young age. Having high-volume spay-neuter options for a community, the first thing I will tell you is I always like to engage the local veterinarians. We never want to cut them out of this system. We want to take the opportunity that if someone's going to bring us an animal that needs to be spayed and neutered for free or low cost, we want to introduce them to the idea that they have to get vet care for their animals. And by the way, while you're here, these are the local vets that you need to go visit and do a follow-up with after you have this animal spayed and neutered. So we want to push the patron or the citizen of that community to go and see their local vets.
Education opportunities for veterinarians for spay-neuter, I think, is important across the board, not just young vets. I think that it's a real shame that more veterinarians that are in private practice are not doing spay-neuter surgeries simply for the reason that they're not comfortable doing them. So I think training opportunities are super vital and really a place that we could make a huge difference if we were able to convince more private practice vets that they can do these, and we get more people doing them, even if they did 2 or 3 more a week than they're currently doing. It can make a huge difference.
My name is Michelle Long Spears. I serve as the District 2 Commissioner in DeKalb County, Georgia. The overpopulation of the DeKalb County shelter has been a real challenge, a concern for so many of us that reside in this community. In 2024, my office invested in the very first high-quality, high-volume spay and neuter for cats in the state of Georgia. Earlier this year, in 2025, my office invested in the very first high-quality, high-volume spay-neuter for dogs in the nation.
Continuing education, or CE, is a critical part of maintaining a veterinary license. Most states require practicing veterinarians and vet techs to complete a set number of CE hours every year or 2, depending on local laws. CE helps ensure you're staying up to date on the latest techniques, tools, and standards of care. And for those working in shelter medicine or community outreach, high-quality, high-volume spay-neuter, or HQHVSN, training can be one of the most impactful CE options out there. High-quality, high-volume spay-neuter training requires a $6,000 budget, 2 to 3 veterinary trainers, and approximately 20 shelter dogs or 40 shelter cats, primarily female. Support from the State Veterinary Medical Association enables the offering of continuing education credits, with participating veterinarians contributing approximately $150 each. Ultimately, HQHVSN training is more than a CE requirement. It's a smart investment in your team's surgical efficiency, your organization's impact, and the well-being of the animals you serve.
Spayathon is just a catchword. It usually involves an effort to do spays and neuters on a large number of animals. We're talking hundreds of animals in a very compact time frame, like a weekend or 3 days or something like that, in which you might be able to get 600 animals sterilized. So it involves usually multiple veterinarians, obviously, multiple technicians and support staff, lots of equipment, and all in a very concentrated place. So it's a logistical challenge.
We're talking about a conglomerate, a collective community of resources. So it's veterinarians, vet techs, volunteers, people to catch animals that are feral. The community has to bring the animals to the facility, and sometimes they don't have transportation, so we may need volunteers to go and pick up the animal. There has to be a station where the animals are kept, then they're prepped for surgery. The surgery's done. The animals then go to recovery and they have to be medicated. There has to be surgery kits. There has to be anesthesia. Oftentimes we like to offer microchips and also vaccines. So all of these things have to be pulled together first, and then the trigger has to be pulled where you're inviting the community to come. And even the administration of that part of it, registering everybody and getting them there, is another effort in itself.
But it can be very effective in creating a sterilized population that's high enough in that population area to effectively decrease reproduction dramatically in that targeted area. So that's kind of the idea of it, is that you blitz it. You're trying to get 80 to 90% of those animals in that area sterilized.
Georgia passed a temporary licensing bill for vets last year where vets can come in and work for a nonprofit for up to 6 months without needing to get an entirely new license, a Georgia license. And so spayathons can really utilize even out-of-state vets to bring them in, be able to do a lot of surgeries and really get those rates up when you identify hotspots for breeding. Spayathons also, one way to target them a little bit more is to focus on the female animals. You get fewer animals altered if you focus on the females, but research shows that there's really not much difference in population growth, whether you spay 70% of the animals in a population or whether you spay and neuter 70% of the animals in a population. So whether you just do the females and get their rates up, or whether you do the females and males and get their joint rates up, there's not any difference in the population growth between those two approaches. So the more efficient way to do it is to focus on the females.
To understand why focusing on the females is important, imagine 10 dogs, half of which are female and half are male. You can only alter 4 of the animals. If you do 2 males and 2 females, you'll have 3 litters produced. If you neuter 4 males, you'll have 5 litters produced. If you spay 4 females, you'll have 1 litter produced. From a reproductive perspective, focusing on the males only makes sense if you can neuter 100% of the male breeding population.
Later this year, my office is so proud to partner with the Georgia Pet Coalition to host a 3-day spayathon. Our goal is to spay and neuter 550 companion animals at that event. Last year, when we hosted our State of DeKalb Animals event, this was an idea that was floated to us by our advocates. We came back, we discussed it internally, and decided that we wanted to advance that initiative forward. I encourage all local elected officials to consider hosting a spayathon in your community. In addition, we are also advocating to our governor at the state level to embrace and support a spayathon throughout the entire state of Georgia next year.
About 28 of our counties do not have any animal control whatsoever. There's no shelter, there's no ordinances, and there's no animal control. Going into rural parts of Georgia like Randolph County like we are doing, and we're putting together an entire project to knock out a whole week's worth of spaying and neutering every day, day in and day out. We're talking thousands of animals. This particular project came out of desperation. Desperation because there's 1 or 2 people there that found us and called us and said, we've got to do something. You wouldn't believe what we're seeing here. And truthfully, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, all the stuff going on. So we started with, well, what do you need? And the first thing out of their mouth was, we need spay and neuter resources, and we don't have it. So can you help us pull it together? And so it's been a step-by-step process of identifying partners that will come in and help us for free, and bringing not only surgical kits, but spay neutering, chips, microchips, people, vet techs, veterinarians, spay neuter vans, mobile units, anesthesia operation units, drugs that are needed for the operations and so forth. So it's a very big effort to put together. And it unfortunately needs to happen, and it needs to happen periodically. But we're only going to be able to do this through the efforts of partnership with nonprofits and private donors and people donating their time as well.
Planning a successful spayathon takes more than good intentions. It takes strategy, teamwork, and community outreach. First, identify the right area. Look for communities with high shelter intake, low access to vet care, or visible overpopulation. Use shelter data or community insights to focus your impact. Next, build your team. Recruit experienced vets and techs trained in high-volume spay-neuter. Then, add volunteers for intake, recovery, and logistics. A strong team keeps the day running safely and smoothly. Finally, spread the word. Target your outreach where the need is greatest. Use flyers, social media, local radio, or trusted community partners to reach pet owners in the languages they speak with the info they need. With the right planning, people, and promotion, your spayathon can change lives, reduce suffering, and build trust where it matters most. Organizing high-quality, high-volume spay-neuter training or a spayathon can be daunting. Here are 7 key steps to set you up for success. Step 1. Set clear objectives. Know your training goals. Are you building surgical skills, expanding community access, or both? Step 2. Identify the target area. Use shelter intake data and local insights to choose where your efforts will have the most impact. Step 3. Recruit your team. You'll need licensed vets, techs, and volunteers ready to work in a fast-paced, high-efficiency setting. Step 4. Find community partners. Collaborate with shelters, rescues, and local leaders to build trust and extend your reach. Step 5. Gather equipment. Stock up on surgical tools, recovery supplies, and mobile or temporary clinic setups. Step 6. Follow all legal, ethical, and medical protocols. Make sure your training meets licensing, safety, and animal welfare standards. And Step 7. Promote smart. Focus your outreach where the need is greatest, in the languages and formats your community responds to. Plan well, and your spayathon won't just run smoothly, it'll make a lasting difference.
It's important to get those surgeries up quickly in a community because studies show that it's the intensity of efforts that frequently makes a difference in whether or not you can reverse the trends in growth for cat and dog populations. And what I mean by that is that if you can get breeding populations up to 70 to 75% spay-neuter rate in a fairly short amount of time, you actually reverse population growth. In addition, most dog bites and dogs hit by cars are intact medium to large breed male dogs. And so those are animals that you're also going to want to get in so that they're not wandering and being in your streets and coming into contact with strange people. So for reproductive purposes, you're definitely focusing on the younger female animals with the longer reproductive horizon. But for public health reasons and public safety reasons, you might be including certain male animals as well.
The spay-neuter work, especially if it can be targeted to community areas or populations of animals that tend to contribute high numbers of intakes to the shelter system, whether it's puppies, kittens, feral cats, neglect cases, poorly cared for groups of animals. Those animals are our reproductive group, and therefore if we can target the spay-neuter to mitigate those reproductive events as best we can, then we will see a direct impact in the shelter communities with less intake.
Investing in spay and neuter services in your community has a positive impact on your bottom line. In DeKalb County, it's roughly $38 a day to house an animal at our animal shelter. Right now, we have about 570 dogs in our animal shelter. So simply do the math. $38 times 570 times 365 days a year. That is expensive.
When voluntary spay-neuter rates increase in a community, there's a couple of things we can expect to see. One of them is that animals that are getting spayed or neutered are going to get basic vaccinations generally at the same time. And that's an overall good thing for public health because it means that we have a higher rate of animals that are vaccinated against rabies, which of course is a zoonotic disease that people can catch from animals. And it also reduces the spread of contagious deadly diseases like panleukopenia in cats and parvovirus in dogs. In addition, you'll see fewer animals wandering because much of the roaming activity is when animals are looking for mates, and that means there'll be fewer negative interactions with people, with cars, with other animals. And in general, you can see that there's a growing understanding that basic vet care is part of pet ownership. And so folks who hadn't really understood the necessity for regular appointments, for example, might be introduced to that by the spay-neuter surgery and the interactions with the vet team with that. I think there's a lot more conversation around ways to improve access to spay-neuter, as well as to work with people, to meet them where they are, but then to work with them to move closer towards spay-neuter and an understanding of it as basic public health for pets. And in that sense, I think that we're making a lot of progress. And things like the DeKalb Spayathon and the high-quality, high-volume spay-neuter trainings there really make me hopeful for certain parts of our country in terms of trying to catch up on the surgeries we're behind on and get ahead of the curve then on reproduction.
So we need targeted spay and neuter efforts in the places that need it the most. So I would start with finding more money and funding, finding more resources and people, and then targeting those areas that need it the most to make the biggest impact.
Challenges to spay-neuter vets, I think, are funding. That is the number one challenge. It's who's paying for it, how do we get more people to pay for it, how do we get more funding for it? Because if the owner can't afford it, we need funding somehow to get it still done.
So right now, because there's a very huge lack of government funding, and I would tell lawmakers, look, if we find these partners out there, these nonprofits or partners that are willing to pony up some money and resources, would the government match those funds? That's a starting point, and that's one thing we are looking at doing. The only spay-neutering that's going on within animal shelters are government-run animal shelters. That funding still comes from some sort of taxpayer money. In these big projects that we can do, where we're partnering with organizations that are willing to front the cost or front the human resources, we would like to see the government at least matching those funds. That's a start, and I'd like to see that happen.
Investigate what's going on in your community. Talk to your colleagues on your county commissions, on your city councils, your delegation members at the state level. At minimum, start the conversation and start identifying funding sources that you can allocate to getting to the root of the problem, that you can appropriate to solve the challenges that you're experiencing with animal services and your community.
There seem to be a lot more animals that are intact and breeding outside of established responsible breeding programs right now than there had been in a while. And I know that that's partially an impact of COVID, but the problem is those sorts of changes become self-perpetuating. And so I guess I can say I have guarded hope that as we figure out how to help vets be more efficient at their surgeries and more confident with them, that they will increasingly be able to help in concerted pushes like spayathons to get breeding hotspots spayed and neutered so that we can curtail the reproduction in a really mindful way.